Now, this video is specific to the people who want to make astrology your profession. That is, you want to make a living out of doing astrology. Now, the thing about astrology is it's one of those things that is a hobby and an interest for lots of people. There are millions of people who have downloaded astrological apps. It's fun to go on websites to sort of read a lot more about astrology. And interestingly enough, there's also a very large amount of people who have realized that astrology can be a fantastic coaching tool, a guidance tool. And over the years, as we've run Selfstrology Academy, there have been lots of people telling us that I can absolutely see the potential of doing astrology as a profession because there are all these people out there who they could be lost, they could be miserable. We can see how we can help. Now, the funny thing is that for the biggest problem that these people are facing is the doubt about, is astrology a legitimate profession? Because it's possible that right now, most of your friends, even if they know that you like or you practice astrology here and there, is that feeling about, that's just something you're into. It's something that's fun and maybe you've taken a couple of courses. There's still a lot of this, how do I qualify to be a professional astrologer? And I also want to say that astrology is not the only profession that has this problem. If you look around, you'll see that there are lots of professions where the majority of people who are into it are actually hobbyists. So for example, like photography, it's so easy for people to just buy a camera, be a photographer. Anyone who posts pictures on Instagram is a photographer, really. And I think in recent times, people have been really into cooking. It's not uncommon for you to sort of watch a few YouTube videos and try out, the new Gordon Ramsay recipe in your kitchen. Lots of people are at that level. But you see, the problem is many people are at what we call the hobbyist level. And it's kind of different from being a professional. And for many of my students who have been on the programs, one of the questions that they want to ask is this: how do you actually make that shift from hobbyist to professional? Now, I've been a professional astrologer for about 18 years now. And I get asked really often, like, what is that one tipping point that shifts a person from doing astrology from a hobby interest level to being a professional? So over the years, we've also had a number of apprentices, people who have been participants in our Pro Astrologers program and also our PA Practitioners program. And naturally, I've had many opportunities to sort of observe the difference between the people who actually do make it and the ones for whom astrology remains a hobby. Now, what I found throughout all the successful students is that they end up using astrology for a pretty specific purpose. So among my apprentices are people who have started using it for healing childhood trauma, for example. And there are those of them who are using astrology for children with special needs, or they are dealing with very difficult decision-making in relationships or in terms of business, and so on and so forth. So what I found is that if it's a pretty vague reason, or especially if I hear things like, I really love astrology, I want to sort of like do this for a living, wouldn't it be great if I could quit my job and just do astrology all day? And to me, there's a huge difference between a professional who is specifically doing astrology so that you deliver a positive, a specific outcome for the group of people you want to serve, versus those who are trying to monetize a hobby. And I understand that it's a very big topic right now because, especially for a lot of people who do want to quit jobs that make them quite miserable, it's very attractive, especially if you love astrology. Wouldn't it be great to just do this, to do what you love all day and then get paid for it? And I think that's a very big difference, because earlier I talked about things like photographers. Now, lots of people love photography, and one of the things that hobbyists really enjoy out of their hobby is that if you have a camera in your hand, the idea is that you can go where you like, take pictures any way you like, and it's all about uploading it onto your Instagram and displaying what it is that you love. Now, it's very different if you're a professional astrologer. So what this means is that they usually do have a space of specialization. There are people who specialize in photographing animals, those who photograph events. And at the end of the day, what's really important to a professional is that if I'm photographing for an event, did the customer get what they needed? rather than I just want to take the pictures that I enjoy. So that's, if you're considering a career in astrology, you really do want to think about, are you doing it because it makes a difference to a specific group of people that you care about and that you want to create a positive outcome for them? Or is this more like because I like astrology and I want to do this for a living? Hey guys, my name is May Sim and I've been a professional astrologer for more than 18 years. I'm also the founder of Selfstrology Academy, where we've taught astrology to people around the world since 2014. Now, our courses are designed to help individuals dig into your astrology charts to figure out how you can be better versions of yourself and also how to lead more meaningful and productive lives. For more information about our courses, you can check out the links in the bio below. And now, back to the content of this video. Now, the second observation that I've made about people who make it as professional astrologers versus everyone else who does it as a hobby is the skill level and the level of commitment. Nowadays, it's really easy to learn astrology. I think you would agree with me that most of the time it's fairly simple to just go on Google, run a quick search, and if you were willing to take the time to read about 1,000 articles, you might get some ability to sort of interpret a chart. But I think also that if somebody was going to make a switch from a hobbyist into a professional, it would be quite important to have a skill level that is significantly higher than the average person who's going to just generate their chart from a free report or a free generator. So this is why it's fairly important for you to think about the kind of value add that you can add on top of the available resources on the internet. Now, some of the difficulties that I've seen from in terms of skill sets from people who are trying to make this a profession is it's insufficient understanding of the chart. So for example, if we talk about something as simple as the fourth house in astrology, quite often the interpretations are home and family. So therefore, if something happens in the fourth house, that it's got to be home. But I think for a lot of people, they started to realize that this kind of interpretation can be extremely inaccurate, in the sense that maybe something shows up, but it really isn't anything to do with home and family. And for a lot of amateurs, they're like, but it's the fourth house. It really should have been, shouldn't there? So I realized that if the vocabulary is fairly shallow, it can be really hard for you to be accurate to begin with. Now, there are other few issues with, for example, nowadays it's really easy for people to sort of generate a chart. I'm very sure you would have come across free chart generators where you could just key in a birth date, birth time, and birth city, and it would generate a chart. But I also realized that as far as the profession goes, there are quite a lot of people who may not have the technical grounding to even understand what the chart really is. And because there's a reliance on an automated chart generator, they might not actually be able to produce a chart had it not been for that particular software. i.e., if you didn't have that software, you'd be lost. Right? You wouldn't actually know what was what. And I think also if, especially if a professional were to be consulted, say, as an expert, or if you were going to teach this material, for example, it's quite important to know simple facts, like what exactly is the midheaven? So I know where it is on the chart, but what is it really in the sky, the midheaven? Or even if two planets are conjunct to each other, does it really mean that they are side by side? Because let me tell you, they're not. And the planets are really far away. So what does it mean in a chart when we observe that the two planets are conjunct? They might be a degree orb, they might be partal, and then what would that mean? So I think in terms of that professionalism, you would expect a professional photographer to understand the theories behind lighting, how a studio works, the settings on the camera, or the storytelling techniques, narrative techniques when it comes to taking pictures, dealing with a crowd, for example. So it's things like that that really makes a difference between what a professional really is, because it really determines the kind of outcome that we produce for the client. And it's my opinion that it's probably not something that you can learn from a class in a week or just from reading websites, because I haven't found websites that were really able to sort of explain properly how you could produce a chart with just pure professional technical grounding. Now, practicing astrology is pretty much the same as practicing almost any other discipline. And the truth is, to make this a profession, you essentially are running a business. Whether you operate in another organization or if you kind of own your own business. The reality is there is selling involved, there is marketing involved, and there is also a lot of these customer management skills involved as well. So I remember speaking with my apprentices, and without question, all of the apprentices say that much as it has been great to learn advanced techniques, professional techniques, but what became much more important for them to learn in their journey was the basics of how do you run a business. And I found that without exception, I think for all the successful astrologers, the majority of them actually say that we sometimes take a lot more effort doing things like creating content, especially now in the digital world, and dealing with customer needs outside of astrology than actually dealing with charts on its own. And I completely concur. So what this also means is that the astrologer doesn't just need to know how to read the chart. In my opinion, what's even more important is how do you explain it to a client who doesn't know astrology. And the reality is, in this profession, we're very often giving news that isn't great. It's unpleasant news, it's disappointing news, for example, or having to deal with attitudes or difficulties, miserable occurrences in their lives. How then do you conduct that discussion? How do we approach a difficult topic, such as trauma or difficult relationships? How do we even open that can of worms and guide someone through if they're just not responding in a very positive manner? And I think these are much more important than the ability to read a chart. Now, on top of that, in terms of running the business, especially if you have no experience running a business before, there are mindsets involved here with regard to how do you explain to your clients the value that trying to convey, what is the value of a consultation or a course or any kind of astrological service. I think also in terms of being able to sort of communicate in terms of various medium, whether you're using Instagram or if you're on YouTube like I am, writing articles, it takes time and it takes expertise to be able to do all of these things in an effective manner. So what this all means is that the commitment to being a professional astrologer is the same as with any other profession. And it's the same as how some people spend years in a university picking up professional skills and then still having to sort of figure out how you be a professional once you get started for real. So I think it's really important that that if you choose to be on this path, is to be prepared that your training is going to require a lot more than just the astrological professional training. So that in our school, there are a range of skill sets that are being taught here. But at the same time, the focus is really on the astrological skills. And even as most of our apprentices benefit from the wide spectrum of skills that are being taught in the program, many of these students also go on to experiment and to produce their own content and to sort of find their own path along the way, their own specializations. And I think that's the way it really should be. So what this means is that if you decide to be on this path, you do need to be prepared that there is a lot of learning to do, and it's a lot more than just doing astrology. Now, for some of you, you may really resonate with the message of this video. You may be asking yourself, is astrology a legitimate profession? How do I justify charging a fee for my astrological services? Now, if this is you, the good news here is that the pro astrologer's journey in Selfstrology Academy is designed to take an individual all the way from the foundations, a solid one in your astrological skills, to being able to use astrology as a coaching transformation tool, and even up to how do you handle your clients, how do you run a business in astrology. Now, if this is you, there is a contact form at the bottom of this page. So do get in touch with our team to let them know of your intention to pursue a profession in astrology, and we'll be happy to guide you about what your next step is. Now, for the rest of you, some of you may be on the fence right now. You may not be 100% sure that you definitely want to pursue astrology as a profession. And if this is you, don't worry too much about it, because I was once in the exact same position as you. Because I remember when I pursued my degree in astrology, I wasn't 100% sure that I definitely wanted this as a profession, but I did know that I wanted to take my education very seriously. And this is why, if you are in this category, what I would suggest is get started with the basics first. Get a very solid foundation, and then go do the psychological astrology course, which will give you a really good sense of, is this the kind of work that you really want to do for the rest of your life? Now, even if you decide at that point that you may not want to pursue a profession in astrology, you would still have equipped yourself with a wonderful profiling tool that is not going to help just yourself, but it will also make a difference to the people you work with and the people you care about. Now, similarly, if you would still like to get more information about the Pro Astrologers program, you can also use the contact form at the bottom of the page to get more information from our team. So until then, I'll see you in class.